37 hours remaining when John stood before the 40 survivors for the last time. They'd gathered in the subway facility's main chamber, 7 teams organized and armed, waiting for his final words. Rachel stood to his right, Michael to his left, both refusing to acknowledge what everyone could see. The infection was winning. John's hands trembled slightly when he wasn't concentrating. The headaches came in waves now, each one stronger than the last. His eyes had developed that faint, translucent quality, the first visible sign of hybrid transformation. When he spoke, sometimes his voice had that synthesized edge, that inhuman resonance that marked the infected. But his mind was still his own. For now. "You know the plan," John said, his voice steady despite everything. 7 teams, 7 targets, simultaneous strikes. You wait for my signal from the primary hub. When I activate the jammer at Denver General, every hybrid in the network will feel it. They'll be disoriented, vulnerable. That's when you hit your targets. Fast, brutal, no mercy. He pulled out the map one last time, marked with the 7 peripheral hubs forming that perfect heptagon around the hospital. The network's strength is coordination. We break that, we win. Each hub you destroy weakens the whole system. By the time I reach patient 0, the network should be fragmented enough that I have a chance. And if you turn before you reach the primary hub?" someone asked, the question everyone was thinking but afraid to voice. John looked at Rachel. They discussed this in private, made the hard decisions that leadership required. Then Rachel puts me down, clean, quick, no hesitation, same as any other hybrid. Rachel's jaw tightened, but she nodded. She'd promised him that much, promised that if the infection took him, she wouldn't let him become a monster, wouldn't let him hurt anyone. "One more thing," John said, pulling something from his pack. Marcus's old microphone, the one from the radio tower, battered and stained but still functional. "I'm taking this with me. If I succeed, if I burn the primary hub and survive long enough, I'll broadcast one final message on 107.3. That's how you'll know it's over. That's how you'll know we won." "And if we don't hear the broadcast?" Michael asked quietly. "Then you rebuild anyway," John said. "You take what's left, you find other survivors, and you build something better from the ashes. You don't stop. You don't give up. You keep fighting until there's nothing left to fight with." He looked at each face, memorizing them, these 40 people who'd trusted him despite everything, who'd followed him knowing he was infected, knowing he might turn on them at any moment, who'd chosen to fight rather than wait to die. "Thank you," John said simply, "for giving me a reason to lead again, for reminding me that Kandahar wasn't the end of my story, for letting me be something more than the guilt I've been carrying." Michael stepped forward, extending his hand. Marcus would be proud, not of the manipulation, not of the schemes, of you, of who you became despite everything he put you through. John shook his hand, then pulled Michael into a brief embrace. "Take care of them, if I don't make it back." "When you make it back," Michael corrected firmly. Rachel was next. She didn't say anything, just wrapped her arms around him and held on tight. John could feel her shaking, could feel the fear she was trying so hard to hide. "I'm sorry," he whispered, "for making you promise to kill me if it comes to that." "Don't be sorry," she said fiercely. "Be alive. Be human. Be the stubborn bastard who survived 2 years alone and then saved 40 people he didn't even know. Be that guy who comes back from the primary hub and teaches me how to be as brave as you." John pulled back, managed a weak smile. "I'm not brave. I'm just too stupid to know when to quit." "Same thing," Rachel said, wiping her eyes. The teams moved out in sequence, each heading to their assigned target. John watched them disappear into the tunnels, these people he'd trained and armed and sent into danger, leading from behind this time, trusting them to succeed without him. It felt right. Felt like actual leadership instead of the micromanagement he'd been taught in the military. Sometimes the best thing a leader could do was prepare people and then get out of their way. When the last team had gone, John turned toward the tunnel that led to Denver General Hospital, 2 miles through infected territory, 2 miles to reach the heart of the network and burn it to ash. He started walking. The infection whispered to him with each step. Not voices exactly, more like suggestions, gentle pushes toward acceptance. The network knew he was coming, could feel him approaching through that buffer zone connection Dr. Chen had described. And it was trying one last time to convince him to join willingly. "You don't have to die," the whispers said. "You could transcend, become something greater than human, lead them into evolution rather than extinction." John ignored it, focused on putting one foot in front of the other. The headache was constant now, a pressure behind his eyes that made it hard to think clearly. His vision would occasionally blur, shift, showing him things that weren't there. Network overlays, data streams, the locations of infected throughout the city, visible as glowing points in his mind's eye. The transformation was accelerating. He had hours left, maybe less, but he only needed to stay human long enough to reach the primary hub and activate the jammer. After that, it didn't matter what happened to him. The tunnel opened into a parking structure 3 blocks from the hospital. John paused, scanning the area. Infected everywhere, hundreds of them, forming a perimeter around Denver General. But they weren't attacking, weren't even moving. They stood perfectly still, watching him with blank eyes, waiting for orders from Patient Zero. John walked through them, his rifle ready but unfired. The infected tracked his movement but didn't engage. It was surreal, walking through a horde of monsters that should be tearing him apart, but instead just watched with that terrible patience. The network was playing with him, showing off its control, proving that it could kill him anytime it wanted but was choosing not to, because it still hoped he'd convert willingly. Denver General loomed ahead, a massive structure of concrete and glass. The main entrance stood open, emergency lights flickering in the darkness beyond. John could feel the network's presence radiating from the building like heat from a furnace. This was it, the source, the core. He stepped through the entrance and into hell. The lobby was transformed into something alien. The infected had rebuilt the interior according to some inhuman aesthetic. Walls covered in organic material that pulsed with bioluminescent light. The floor a network of cables and tubes carrying fluids John didn't want to identify. And at the center of it all, standing perfectly still with arms outstretched like a conductor before an orchestra, was Patient Zero. It had been human once, The remnants of a hospital gown suggested a patient rather than staff, but the transformation had progressed so far beyond what John had seen in Vance or Dr. Chen. Patient Zero's body was almost transparent, the skin like frosted glass through which the circuitry and nanotechnology were clearly visible. Its face was smooth and featureless except for eyes that glowed with internal light. When it spoke, the voice came from everywhere and nowhere, synthesized and terrible. "Welcome, Captain Martinez. We've been waiting for you." John raised his rifle. "I'm not here to talk." "No," Patient Zero agreed. "You're here to destroy us, to burn the primary hub and collapse the network. Dr. Chen told you everything before we terminated her. She was always too sentimental, too attached to her human identity. But we learned from her mistake." The infected around the lobby began moving, not attacking but repositioning, forming a circle around John and Patient Zero. "You can't win." Patient Zero continued. "Even if you activate your jammer, even if you cut us off from the network temporarily, this body has been enhanced beyond anything you've encountered. We are the template, the perfect hybrid, the evolutionary pinnacle. You cannot kill us." "Maybe not," John said, "but I can sure as hell try." He fired. The bullets hit Patient Zero's center mass, staggering it backward. Black blood sprayed from the wounds, but Patient Zero didn't fall, didn't even seem particularly bothered. "Predictable," it said. "The network knows all your tactics, Captain, knows how you think, how you fight. You can't surprise us." John activated the jammer. The effect was immediate and catastrophic for the network. Patient Zero's eyes widened, its body convulsing as the connection to thousands of infected was suddenly severed. Around the lobby, infected collapsed like puppets with cut strings. The organic material on the walls began to writhe and decay. But Patient Zero didn't fall. It stumbled, clearly disoriented, but remained standing. "Interesting," it gasped, its voice losing the synthesized quality. "You actually did it. Cut us off from the network. We're alone in here now, just you and us." It looked down at its wounded torso. "And you were right. This body can be damaged, can be killed. It'll just take more than bullets." John felt his radio crackle. Rachel's voice, distant and full of static. "John, we're seeing results. The infected at Hub 3 just lost coordination. Teams are engaging now." The peripheral strikes had begun. All across Denver, 7 teams were attacking 7 hubs, taking advantage of the network's disorientation. If they succeeded, if they killed the hybrids controlling each hub, the network would fragment completely. But first, John had to finish what he'd started here. Patient Zero moved with inhuman speed, closing the distance between them in a heartbeat. John barely had time to drop his rifle and draw his combat knife before they collided. The hybrid was strong, impossibly strong, its enhanced body far beyond human limitations. They fought in brutal silence, John's training against Patient Zero's raw power. The knife found flesh again and again, carving through the hybrid's transparent skin, but each wound began healing almost immediately. "You can't win," Patient Zero repeated, driving John backward. "Your infection is too advanced. We can feel it, Captain. Feel you slipping away. In minutes, maybe seconds, you'll be one of us. And then all of this will have been for nothing." John felt it too. The transformation accelerating, his control weakening. His vision kept shifting to that network overlay, showing him data streams and connection points. His thoughts were becoming clouded, invaded by suggestions that weren't his own. Stop fighting. Accept the inevitable. Join us. No, John snarled, slamming Patient Zero against a wall. I'm not done yet. He'd been saving one thing, one final weapon Dr. Chen had mentioned in her notes. The nanotechnology couldn't survive extreme heat. Fire destroyed it completely. John's tactical vest still had 2 thermite grenades, the same kind he'd used to kill Major Park, the same kind that had nearly killed him. This time, he wouldn't be so lucky. You're going to burn, John said, pulling both grenades free. And I'm going to burn with you, but at least I'll die human. Patient Zero's eyes widened in understanding. No, the network needs this body, needs the template. You can't. John pulled both pins simultaneously. 4 seconds, he said calmly. Not enough time for you to get clear. Not enough time for me to get clear. We both burn. Patient Zero tried to run. John held on, wrapping his arms around the hybrid, using every ounce of strength to keep it from escaping. The grenades hit the floor between them. The thermite ignited with a brilliant white flash. Heat beyond anything John had experienced. Pain beyond description. His tactical vest caught fire, the thermite burning through material and flesh with equal efficiency. Patient Zero screamed, a sound that was somehow both synthetic and organic, as the nanotechnology in its body began to fail catastrophically. John could feel his own body burning, the infection trying desperately to repair damage that couldn't be repaired. And beneath the pain, beneath the burning, he felt something else. Freedom. The network's whispers stopped. The pressure behind his eyes vanished. For the first time since Marcus's death, his mind was completely, totally his own. He was dying. But he was dying human. Through the flames, John saw the walls beginning to collapse. The organic material was burning too, the entire network infrastructure in the building failing as Patient Zero's body disintegrated. The primary hub was being destroyed just like Dr. Chen had predicted. John's radio crackled one last time, Rachel's voice broken by static but audible. John, all 7 hubs are down. The hybrids are dead. The infected are losing coordination everywhere. We did it. We actually... The ceiling collapsed, cutting off the transmission. John didn't feel the impact, didn't feel anything except a strange sense of peace as the darkness took him. He'd completed the mission, led his team to victory, saved the people who'd trusted him. For the first time since Kandahar, he had led people into danger and brought them out alive. That was enough. That was everything. The last broadcast ended in fire and silence. Rachel reached the hospital 3 hours later, leading every survivor she could gather. They'd won. All 7 peripheral hubs destroyed, the hybrids killed, the infected reduced to mindless wanderers without network coordination. The war was over, but John was still inside. "We need to wait," Michael said, holding her back. "The building is unstable. Another collapse could kill us all." "I don't care," Rachel said, pulling free. I made him a promise. I find his body. I bury him properly. I don't leave him in there." She pushed through the rubble, climbed over collapsed walls, fought her way to what had been the lobby. The heat was still intense, the thermite fires having consumed everything flammable. Bodies everywhere, infected and hybrid alike, all burned beyond recognition. And in the center of it all, partially buried under concrete and steel, a tactical vest with one identifying feature still visible. John's name stitched on the front pocket. Rachel dug with her bare hands, ignoring the pain, ignoring Michael's shouts to be careful. She reached the body beneath the rubble and froze. John's eyes were open, looking directly at her, and they were human, completely, totally human. No translucence, no circuitry, no sign of infection. "Help me," he whispered, his voice so quiet she almost missed it. "Can't move, but I'm still here, still human." Rachel screamed for help, and within minutes they had John extracted from the rubble. His burns were severe, covering most of his torso and arms, but he was alive. Somehow, impossibly, he'd survived. "The infection," John rasped as they carried him toward the exit. "It's gone. Burned out of me. I can feel it. Nothing left but me." Dr. Chen's research had mentioned it in passing. Extreme heat could destroy the nanotechnology, but she'd never suggested it could cure someone actively transforming. Had never implied that someone could survive the process. But John had, through sheer stubborn refusal to die, through rage and determination and probably more luck than anyone deserved. He'd burned the infection out of his system and lived to tell about it. They reached the survivors gathered outside, 40 people who'd risked everything on John's plan. When they saw him alive, a cheer went up that echoed through the empty streets. "Did we win?" John asked, his vision blurry from smoke and pain. "We won," Rachel said, tears streaming down her face. "All 7 hubs destroyed. The network is gone. The infected are just wandering now. No coordination, no intelligence. We can actually avoid them, survive them. You did it, John. You saved us all." John managed a weak smile. "Wasn't just me. Was all of us. Everyone who fought, everyone who believed we could win." He coughed, pain lancing through his burned chest. "Marcus was right. Leadership isn't about being perfect. It's about giving people a chance." "Rest," Rachel ordered. "We'll get you to a medical facility. Treat the burns. You're going to survive this, John. You're going to live." John closed his eyes, let the exhaustion take him. For the first time in 2 years, his sleep wasn't haunted by Kandahar, wasn't haunted by the faces of his dead team. He'd made peace with the past by building a future. 3 days later, John sat in what remained of the radio station, Marcus's old microphone in front of him. His burns were bandaged, his body weak, but his mind was clear, clearer than it had been since before the outbreak. The generator hummed in the background, Rachel having scavenged enough fuel for one last broadcast. The survivors had voted, insisted that John be the one to send it. The final message on 107.3. John keyed the microphone, felt the familiar weight of it in his hand. "This is John Martinez, broadcasting on 107.3. If you're hearing this, if you're still out there, I have news. The network is gone. The hybrid leadership is destroyed. The infected are no longer coordinated. They can be avoided, survived, even eliminated now that they're acting on base instinct rather than collective intelligence. He paused, gathering his thoughts. The war isn't over. There are still thousands of infected out there. Still dangers, still challenges. But the worst of it, the intelligent threat that was hunting us, that's finished. We won. To the survivors in Denver and beyond, there's a community forming here. We're building something from the ruins, not trying to recreate what we lost, but creating something new, something better. If you can reach us safely, you're welcome. If you can't, then build your own communities, survive, rebuild. Don't give up. John looked at the map on the wall, all those safe zones that had become graveyards. I've learned something in the past 72 hours. Leadership isn't about being perfect. It's not about never making mistakes or never losing people. It's about giving people the tools and the training to fight for themselves. It's about trust and sacrifice and believing that others can succeed, even when you're not there to guide them. Marcus Chen, the man who built this station and who manipulated me back into leadership, he understood that. He knew I needed to lead again, not because the world needed me, but because I needed it. Needed a purpose beyond survival. Needed to prove to myself that Kandahar wasn't the end of my story. So this is the last broadcast from this station, but it's not the last broadcast ever. Somewhere out there, someone else will pick up a microphone. We'll start talking, sharing information, building connections, and that's how we survive. Not as isolated individuals, but as a community, as humanity. John's throat tightened, emotion overwhelming him. To the 40 people who trusted me despite knowing I was infected, who fought beside me and survived, thank you. You reminded me what it means to lead, what it means to be human. And to Marcus Chen, wherever you are, you manipulative bastard, you were right. I needed this, needed to lead again, to prove I could bring people through hell and out the other side. I hope you're proud. I hope you're at peace. He took a breath, steadied himself. This is John Martinez, signing off from 107.3. The voice of Pinewood Ridge is going silent, but humanity's voice will continue in every survivor who chooses to help rather than hurt, in every community that shares rather than hoards, in every person who decides that the darkness won't win. Stay safe, stay human, and keep talking. The last broadcast ends here. But the story of our survival is just beginning. John released the transmit button, let the silence fill the studio. Around him, Rachel and Michael and the others waited, bearing witness to this moment. It's done, John said quietly. The last broadcast is over. No, Rachel corrected, smiling through tears. The last broadcast from Marcus's station is over, but you'll broadcast again. When the community needs guidance, when survivors need hope, you'll pick up that microphone, because that's who you are now. Not a soldier running from his past, a leader building toward the future. John looked at the microphone, at the equipment Marcus had maintained for 47 days, at the legacy of a man who'd believed in him when he couldn't believe in himself. Maybe, he said, when I'm ready, when there's something worth saying. There's always something worth saying, Michael said. That's what Marcus taught us. That silence is surrender. That as long as we keep talking, keep connecting, keep fighting, we're still human, still alive, still winning. John nodded slowly. The burns on his chest ached. His body was weak from the ordeal, but his spirit was stronger than it had been in years. He'd walked into hell and come back human, had led people through the apocalypse and brought them out alive, had finally, truly, earned the title of leader. The generator's hum filled the silence as the sun set over Denver, painting the ruined skyline in shades of orange and red. Somewhere in the city, 40 survivors were building fires, sharing food, telling stories about the battle they'd won together. And in the radio station, John Martinez sat with the microphone that had changed everything, ready to rest, ready to heal, ready to live. The last broadcast was over, but the story of humanity's survival had just begun.